Hi everybody, Fred the Pirate here, and I am here to review Game of Thrones Season 3, Episode 8, entitled Second Sons. So this episode was pretty exciting. I enjoyed it a lot. Um, and it's hard to believe that we only have two more episodes until the end of Season 3. So, it just seems like the season went by really fast, but all the seasons of Game of Thrones seem to go by really quick, which I guess isn't too hard to do when you only have a 10 episode long season. But let's get right into it. Alright, so with this episode, we kind of start off with Arya and the Hound, and I think that they're sleeping out in the woods somewhere. Um, and we wake up, and Arya, she wakes up before the Hound does, so she grabs this big rock and she tries to kill him, but he actually wakes up before she can do it. And the way he does it is really cool. Like he says, if you're gonna kill me, do it, but like I'm only gonna give you one chance. And it's like, if you kill me, you're free. But I think he says if you don't manage to kill me, I'm gonna cut off your hand. So, Arya decides against killing him, and so they're riding around in the Riverland somewhere, and he tells and Arya asks, is that the Black River, because like there's this big river, and the Hound asks her like, where do you think I'm taking you? And she's like, to King's Landing, and he says, fuck Joffrey, and fuck the Queen. So it's like he tells Arya that he's gonna take her to the twins, and he explains he's taking her there because her uncle, Catelyn's brother, is being married off to one of the Frey girls, and that he's going to give Arya to them in exchange for money, because he knows if he gives them Arya that they'll pay him and then he can go do whatever he's going to do. So that's really interesting. So maybe Arya will get to see Catelyn and Jon again after everything pans out. So I think after that happens, we get a scene where I believe Arya is not Arya, where Sansa is getting prepared for her wedding, and Tyrion comes in, and he really ineloquently tries to tell Arya like that he didn't want to do this, and that he understands that this is awful. And it was a very interesting scene. It was a really awkward scene, which is really out of character for Tyrion. It's like he didn't know what to do. So that was a really cool scene. And I believe right after that, we actually spend a lot of time in King's Landing this episode, because quite a really big thing happens in that, which is in this episode, Tyrion and Sansa get married, so we spend quite a bit of time with them. But right after Tyrion talks to Sansa, that I believe we have a scene with Daenerys, and Daenerys is sitting down where they're still away from the Yellow City. I can't believe I forgot. Like I think the Yukon City, not Yukon. Like I'm pronouncing it wrong. Like it was just in there an episode ago. But they're camping out of that, and so they found out who the strong allies of the Yellow City were, and it turns out that they're this group of sword sales called the Second Son. So they're this giant mercenary army, and so they have 3 leaders. And so she meets with them, and she discusses with them, having them become loyal to her. And she's like, if you come side with me, I can give you all the riches and gold and stuff that you want, and that could be very advantageous to you. And so and she said, I'll give you a couple days to think about it. And the leader of it is like really, he's just a jerk, and he's very misogynistic, and he's very belittling of Daenerys, and and she tells one of her advisors, not Jorah, but the other guy with the white beard, like she says, if we get into a fight with them, like I want you to kill the leader of the Second Sons first because he's kind of a douchebag, and he says I'll gladly do that. And I believe right after that, we get a scene with the leaders of the Second Son, and they're talking about how they're going to deal with Daenerys. And so what they do is they have the slave girl pick out 3 coins, and the leader says the guy who gets the square-shaped coin has to go and sneak into Daenerys's camp during the night and kill her, which that's how they decide to take care of her. And so, out of like the 3 leaders of the Second Sons, like the leader of it, like the main guy, like he has really short hair. Then they have this darker skinned guy with long hair, and then they have like this really handsome looking guy, and I don't think it's like a mistake or anything, or just a coincidence that that guy's really handsome. Now I didn't quite catch any of their names, so, and I always have a problem with this with Game of Thrones, like I never quite catch the new character's name the first time. Like it usually takes me a couple times to like hear their name, and they only like say his name like a couple times, so. And he kind of has like this kind of mumbly voice, so like at least when he speaks his name, so it's kind of hard to pick up on. But anyways, it turns out that he ends up pulling the square-shaped coin, and so he has to go in there and sneak in and kill Daenerys. So we cut away from them, and we get quite a few scenes with Melisandre and not Renly. We get a couple scenes with Melisandre and Gendry, and so Gendry's made it to Stannis' stronghold, and so she introduces him to Stannis, and so apparently the plan was to sacrifice Gendry to the gods, but the way Melisandre's going to do this is that she's going to have Gendry be bathed and, clothed in nicer clothes, and she explains to Stannis why she's doing this because, Stannis is like wondering like why you're putting all this fanfare in it, and she says, and she asks Stannis like, well, have you ever killed a lamb? And he's like, no. Well, she says like, if when you're killing a lamb, if the lamb sees the blade and it freaks out and then you go kill it, like that fear taints the meat, and so like you don't want to have the lamb see the blade. And so he's like, well, have you killed a lot of sheep? And she's like, yeah, and none of them have ever seen the blade. So, and I think it's obvious that she's talking about people, which is a pretty ominous statement, and I think that statement could be just as applied to Stannis, because I know there's been a lot of people who have a lot of misgivings about Melisandre, and that's certainly a very poignant statement, like the fact that she's killed a lot of lambs, and none of them have seen the blade. Is like, who's to say that, Stannis isn't another one of these lambs, and that, all this fanfare that she's giving him isn't just a way to, lull him into a false sense of security. So definitely a really interesting point there. And so after that, we get another scene really quickly after that where Stannis goes and talks to Davos. And before that, we see Davos in his cell, and he's teaching himself how to read with the book that Stannis' daughter gave him. And so Stannis comes down to his cell, and so he tells Davos that he's free now, and that Davos just has to promise not to kill Melisandre. And he's like, sure. And he's like, I can't say that I'm not going to speak against him. And so Stannis informs Davos of what they're going to do to Gendry. And Davos, mentions some of his issues with that he feels that it's not quite right to kill Gendry, because Gendry, even though he's Robert's, bastard, that, Gendry didn't do anything to Stannis, and that, that it would be wrong to kill him because you know, again, he didn't do anything and he's not really a threat to Stannis, and so he feels that it's kind of questionable. And so they kind of, and he mentioned, you know, and the thing is when Stannis goes to release him, he mentions to Davos that, you know, Melisandre left and then she came back. And Davos kind of picks up on the fact that, um, and he tells Stannis, like, you know, you could have released me yesterday from my cell or tomorrow or the next day, but like you chose today. And he's like, and it's like, I have a feeling the reason why you chose today is because you wanted me to counsel you um, on this decision, and about how, and the reason why you wanted me to counsel you is because you have your own misgivings. And so that was certainly a really interesting scene. Um, all right. And then after that, we get a whole bunch of scenes where we're in King's Landing. So what happened this episode, like I mentioned earlier, is that Tyrion and Sansa get married. So we had the first scene where um, Arya's dressed up and, you know, in her bridal gown, and she's got her hair all done up, and, you know, and she looks really pretty. And they're going into a chapel area so they can get married. And so Tyrion enters first, and then Sansa. But we have this really interesting scene before that where Marjorie kind of tries to canoodle with Cersei, you know, and she tells Cersei, you know, we're going to be sisters soon, you know, and they start sweet talking. And, you know, and Cersei actually has a really good moment at this thing where she asks Marjorie, like, can you sing really good? And she's like, well, I'm, you know, more of a better at dancing than singing. And she's like, well, I'm sure that you've heard about the song about the House of Rain um, here at court, and I'm sure you could see that. And Marjorie's like, yeah, like I've heard it so many times, and not the House of Rain, I think the Court of Rain, and so Cersei asked Marjorie, well, do you know what the song's about? And she's like, well, not as well as you probably do. And so Cersei begins to explain that the Court of Rain is a song about a family of the Rain family, and that in the past they were the second wealthiest family in Westeros, um, just like how the Tyrells are now. And she explains, like, you know, if you were the second richest house in Westeros, like, you know, what would stop you from taking the next step in becoming first, and, you know, in building yourself, you know, and being on up high on a pedestal, like high above everyone else. And so, like, Marjorie doesn't say anything because she's smart, and she knows she's getting set up. And so Cersei mentions that in the past there was, you know, the House of Rain, and that the leader of it decided that he was going to build himself tall towers, and that was taller and more grand than Castle Rock was, that he was going to give his wife the diamonds bigger than the diamonds worn by Cersei's mother to his wife, and that Cersei mentions that the guy decided to rebel and try to usurp Tywin, and that Tywin responded by wiping out the entire Rain house. And so, and Cersei mentions that when he did this, that he killed every man, woman, and child, and that he hung their bodies in front of Castle Rock in the summer so that they could rot there. And she said it was a very long summer. And so, and she tells, and Marjorie goes, not Marjorie, but Cersei turns to Marjorie, and she's like, if you ever call me sister again, like, I'll have somebody strangle you in your sleep. So, like, Cersei laid down the business, and I have to say, like, definitely a really good Cersei moment. Not such a great Marjorie moment. Like, usually Marjorie's, pretty savvy, but I think it was nice kind of to see where Marjorie's limitations were as far as sweet talking people. I think the problem with Marjorie is, I think maybe she's just gotten too used to dealing with Joffrey. And the thing is that Joffrey is an idiot, and, you know, and obviously, you know, you can manipulate him into doing anything if if you talk to him in a certain manner. And the thing is I'll admit, um, Cersei's probably not the savviest person in Westeros, but it's definitely insulting to try to talk to her like Joffrey, because like, that shit's not gonna work with Joffrey. Um, yeah, and I'm kind of like wondering why Marjorie did that, because like that wasn't really a smart move, because like, honestly, I don't think like I think honestly, I think Marjorie's way too used to talking to Joffrey or to Sansa. And the thing is with Joffrey is, like I said, he's an idiot, and you can sweet talk him into anything. And the problem with Sansa is that, she's kind of naive, and so if you talk to her kind of in a soft and non-threatening way, that, generally you can reassure her, and that kind of also makes Sansa pretty easy to manipulate. Um, Cersei's not really like that. I mean, Cersei can certainly be manipulated, but I don't think sweet talking her, at least in that situation. Um, well, I mean, you could have sweet talked her, but that's definitely not the way to do it. I mean, because the thing is that she's being punished by marrying Loras. So I think the last thing that you want to do is, talk to her about marrying Loras. And the thing is that, she thinks the Tyrells are assholes, and I guess I'm kind of surprised that Marjorie didn't know that. So, yeah, definitely not one of Marjorie's better moments. But it is, it's kind of nice to, to see a character falter sometimes. I mean, because we've been seeing throughout this whole episode, Marjorie just really, hit all the balls out of the park, one after another. So it's kind of nice to see her kind of strike out, just to at least know where her strengths lie. I don't know if this is, the boundaries of her expertise, or if this was kind of just a bad day. So it'll be interesting to see that. Um, but I think it's definitely a learning lesson for Marjorie, and I think she'll probably definitely keep this altercation in mind in the future. So after that, we go through the proceedings of Tyrion and Sansa's wedding. Joffrey walks Sansa down the aisle, because obviously Ned's dead, and he tells her, like, well, since your father's gone, as the father of the realm, it's my duty to, walk you down the aisle, which I think was just kind of adding insult to injury, since, Joffrey's the reason why Ned's dead. So it's like it was obviously just a dick move. So then she walks down the aisle, and then they have this thing where Joffrey gets all the way down there, and there's this step stool there for Tyrion, so they can have their wedding ceremony. And Joffrey takes the step stool, and he takes it away just so he can humiliate Tyrion, because he thinks Tyrion's a dick. And so, as part of the wedding ceremony, that it's customary for the groom to place a cloak on the bride, and obviously Tyrion has a lot of trouble doing this, because Sansa's quite a bit taller than him, and this is just a huge way to humiliate Tyrion. And so Tyrion has to ask Sansa to kneel down so he can do this, and then right after that, I believe we go to their wedding reception, and Tyrion just ends up getting shit-faced drunk, and which is pretty interesting. Sansa kind of ends up leaving the table for a second. We have this really great scene with Lady Olenna, where she's talking about what the relationship Loras and Marjorie will have, since they're marrying Joffrey and Cersei respectively, and pretty much like not only are they going to be and it's obvious that she thought, and she brings up so many good points, because Cersei, because Marjorie and Loras are siblings, and because they're marrying Joffrey and Cersei, who are son and mother, that when they get married and they become in-laws, there's just going to be this hilarious incestuous like in law stuff like that, she mentions that Loras, besides being Marjorie's brother, will now be her father-in-law, since he's going to marry Cersei and become Joffrey's stepfather. So that's really weird. And I love this scene because, like, I think it really shows, like, Tywin is good at a lot of things. Like, he's good at a lot of thoughts, but it is obvious that Tywin did not think through the implications of this marrying the Tyrells to Joffrey and Cersei. Because the thing is he could have married, the thing is that he could have married Loras to anybody. Like, he could have married Loras to any of the Lannisters, like, but he chose Cersei. And the thing is he could have married off Cersei to anybody to punish her, but he picked Loras, and it's like, and in doing so, he caused like this hilarious incestuous fuck up of titles, and it's like the whole reason why he's marrying off Cersei is to try to get away from incest rumors, and it's like, you just, like, you're gonna make everybody in this matchup look like a bunch of hillbillies. Like, I mean, like, why did you do that? And it's like, and I love that Lady Olenna's doing that, because I think she's really digging at Tyrion. Like, she can't do a whole bunch about what's happening, but I think it's obvious that she knows that that Tywin's going to end up eating a lot of crow after people think about this, because honestly, I'm pretty sure she's probably not the only person who's going to stop and think about the implications of, in-law status, like after everybody marries everybody. So, and I'm pretty sure everybody's going to have a bunch of jokes, because, like, to be honest, like, the Lannisters might be the most wealthy and powerful house in Westeros, but I think it's obvious that they're definitely not the most popular. And so I think this is really going to bite Tywin in the ass, which is really hilarious. And so it's really nice watching her have a bunch of fun. So, like, she's having a good time. And so, but she ends up driving off Loras, who just doesn't want to think about this. So he goes and he tries to talk to Cersei real quick, just to break the ice, and she doesn't want anything to do with him. And like I said, Sansa leaves Tyrion for a minute after she asks if she can leave, and Joffrey decides to get up too, and apparently he does this so he can take the opportunity to talk to Sansa, and pretty much he tells her, you must be really happy to be marrying a Lannister. And she says, yeah. And then he says, pretty soon you're going to have a Lannister baby in you. And he says, I bet you really didn't care who puts the baby in you. And he tells her, maybe tonight after my uncle passes out, I can come into your room and be the one to put the Lannister baby in you. And she doesn't really say anything. And he's like, oh, you don't want me to do that? And he's like, well, too bad. I'll just get my guards to hold you down. So pretty much Joffrey just tells Sansa that he's going to rape her, and because he's an asshole. And then right after that moment, we have this thing where Joffrey wants to have a bedding ceremony, which I think apparently to me sounds like this really humiliating ceremony where you strip the clothes off of the bride and bridegroom, and then people carry them on their backs to their bedchambers. And so, and I think really he just wants to do this obviously as a way to further humiliate Joffrey, not Joffrey, because Joffrey's doing to further humiliate Tyrion and Sansa. And before he does it, like, Sansa's like looking like, oh no. And so obviously Tyrion's kind of drunk, and he says no, he's up at the area, and he says no bedding chamber, and Joffrey's like, well, where's your spirit for tradition? And he starts pushing, and so then Tyrion gets pissed, and he takes his knife and he slams it on the ground, and he says, it's like, you can have, if you make me do a bedding chamber, that when you have your bedding chamber bedding ceremony for your wedding night, on your wedding night, that when you go to have sex with your wife, that you're going to be doing it with a wooden cock if you make me do this. So pretty much he threatens to cut off Joffrey's junk, and Joffrey takes this as bad as well as he would take this. And so he kind of starts throwing a hissy fit at Tyrion, but Tywin kind of steps in and he says, you know, that your uncle didn't mean it, that he's just drunk. And it was really great seeing this moment with Tyrion, because, like, there's a scene where he's holding the knife and he's really pissed off, and you know he's pissed off, but, like, he does this thing where he turns around and he starts smiling and joking and acting like, oh, like, I'm just silly and drunk. And you know, even though he's drunk, like, he'd be... Yeah, alright, so then, after that, Tyrion and Tywin both calms things down, and Joffrey ends up calming down. But it was certainly really interesting seeing Tyrion be able to, like, just, you know, control himself like that, and just be able to go from being really pissed off to just, you know, having to play the fool because he has to. So then right after that, Tyrion and Sansa end up leaving the ceremony, and, like, and Tyrion keeps kind of making an ass of himself on purpose to kind of, I think, defuse things and to kind of do what everybody expects him to do. And I think it was kind of also a way to get back at Tywin. You know, I think it was a good way to, like, you know, humiliate Tywin, although it was probably also kind of humiliating for Sansa, which probably wasn't awesome either. But yeah, I mean, the Tyrion can't be awesome all the time. Like, it's like, I think he probably chose more to piss off Tywin than to make sure he wasn't pissing off Sansa. But anyway, they go to Tyrion's bedchamber. And he explains to Sansa that, you know, he has to, like, they have to consummate their marriage, and so he's still drinking some wine. And so then Sansa goes and pours herself some wine, and she takes a big drink, and then she goes over to the bed area and she starts undressing, and, you know, she takes off her dress, and then she starts to take off her under things. But then Tyrion stops her, and he tells her, you know, you don't have to have sex with me. And he's like, the thing is, like, you don't have to share a bed with me until you want to share a bed with me. And Sansa's like, well, what happens if I never want to share a bed with you? And so he said, like, he raises up his glass to do a toast, and he says, to the beginning of the long night. And I think it was obvious that he's making a reference to the Night's Watch, because, I mean, pretty much at this point, you know, he's celibate. Like, because the thing is, like, either, you know, he has sex with Sansa now, or he can't have sex with anybody without being unfaithful. Although I'm still pretty sure he's gonna go sleep with Shay, but obviously at this point Shay's still kind of pissed at him. So right now Tyrion's kind of in a forced state of celibacy, which is really interesting. Yeah, and so we cut real quick to the scene after that where he kind of just passes out on the chaise lounge, and then Sansa goes to bed, and luckily nothing awful happened to her during the night, so I guess Joffrey was just being an asshole. So I guess his threat of raping was kind of just a empty threat, but I mean, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell when he's, you know, because obviously he can be super sadistic, so it's kind of hard to tell. But anyway, like, Shay comes in, and, you know, she comes in really loud, and, you know, she's I'm here with your breakfast, and she goes up to, she slams it down on the thing, because she knows Tyrion's sleeping over there and he's hungover, and then she goes and she grabs this pillow under his head, and, like, his head falls down because, like, she's being really pissy towards Tyrion, which was funny to watch. And so at this point, like, Sansa gets up, and I think she puts on her robe and she goes away, and then Shay goes to change the bed sheets, and then she looks at them and she notices that they're clean, and so she knows just by looking at the bed sheets that they're clean, and that Tyrion in fact did not sleep with Sansa, which obviously we get a shot of Shay's face, and we know that she's really happy about that. So that was really cool. And so that's pretty much all that happened in Westeros. This episode, we have a couple things happening with with Gendry and Melisandre and stuff, and some stuff with Daenerys. So I'll do the thing with Gendry and Melisandre first. So pretty much Melisandre ends up giving Gendry some wine, and she's sweet talking him, and she ends up undressing him and getting him in bed, and she sleeps with him for a little bit. But but then she starts to tie him up and um to tie him into bed. And at first, it looks like stuff's really bad, but she ends up taking these leeches out, and she ends up putting them on Gendry, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And she's like, "I told you, there's power in a king's blood, and you have a lot of blood." And so she keeps putting these leeches on him, and she puts one on his chest and one on his stomach, and then she puts one on his genitals, and then he's freaking out because he doesn't want to leech anywhere near his junk. But right when this is happening, Stannis and Davos come in, and she told him, that the reason why she was doing this, and that it was Davos' fault that she was doing this, because he doubted her power, and so she has to show him the power of a king's blood. And so she rips the leeches off of Gendry, and so she has Stannis throw them in the fire. And the reason why he's doing this is that he's cursing. He curses Robb, Balon Greyjoy, and then Joffrey. So so he ends up so he's using the three leeches full of the blood as a way to curse his three adversaries. Although I'm kind of really surprised, why is he going after Balon Greyjoy? I don't remember them ever saying that Balon Greyjoy ever did anything to him. So it's I'm kind of wondering why they're going after Balon Greyjoy. I totally get why he's cursing Robb and Joffrey, but wouldn't it have been more pertinent to curse Tywin, or curse one of the Tyrells, because those people screwed him over. I'm really wondering what the fuck did Balon Greyjoy ever do to Stannis Baratheon? Did I miss that somewhere? Because I don't remember him ever having anything to do with Balon Greyjoy. I always kind of assumed that Balon Greyjoy was kind of just an asshole pirate who lived up in the north, and who kind of just, mainly kept to himself. He just liked to pillage shit. But I don't really think the Greyjoys really have a whole lot of influence in Westeros. So I don't get that. I get cursing Theon Greyjoy a little bit, because he is Robb's right-hand man, but at the same time, I don't really think Stannis gives a shit about Theon. But I figure if he's gonna curse a Greyjoy, wouldn't it make sense that it would be Theon and not Balon? Because at least Theon has something to do with fucking over Stannis. But because he was Robb's right-hand man, but he's not anymore, and I'm pretty sure that's probably common knowledge at this point. So again, I'm really confused. Why is he cursing Balon Greyjoy? They must have said at some point in the series about Balon Greyjoy doing something to Stannis, because I don't know why he'd curse him. But it'll be interesting to see how that'll work itself out. So that's pretty much what happens with that. So far, Gendry is still alive. I don't know if he's still safe, or if he's still going to get screwed with. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how things work out with Gendry and Stannis and Davos and Melisandre and everybody involved with them. So after that, we get a scene where we see the guy, one of the second sons, dressed up as an Unsullied, walking into Daenerys' camp, and we know he's him, because they're focusing on him, and it's and we know what's happening. So he ends up breaking into Daenerys' tent while she's taking a bath, and the female translator, who I don't remember what her name is, we find out that she can speak 19 languages. Which she tells Daenerys, well, it's not really that hard, because you learned how to speak Dothraki, fairly okay, within a year. And Daenerys is like, well, it was either that or, keep grunting at my husband. But then she stopped real quick and she's like, what do you mean that I speak Dothraki okay? And she's like, Drogo said that, I spoke it like I was born speaking it. And so in her lady attendant, like, kind of, has, like, she knows she kind of has to step lightly because she's not sure what to do with Daenerys, but she kind of tells Daenerys, like, it's like, you don't really speak it that well, because Daenerys ends up saying something in Dothraki, and so she corrects her pronunciation. So it turns out that Drogo was kind of bullshitting to Daenerys about her Dothraki speaking skills, which, is kind of sweet. Like, that he, cared about his wife enough that he kind of spared her feelings about, like, you don't speak it that well, but like, you're still my wife, so I'm gonna bullshit, which is really kind of extra sweet based on how their relationship actually started, because, like, obviously, they didn't marry each other because they loved each other. Like, they learned to love and care about each other. And so it's kind of nice to have that Daenerys, remember that moment that she and Drogo had as a couple. And so that was definitely really nice. But anyways, one of the second son guys, he ends up breaking into the tent, and he ends up taking Daenerys's handmaid and lady hostage, and he tells her, if you scream, I'll kill your handmaid lady. And so he explains, and at first we think that he's going to kill Daenerys, but it turns out that he is not there to kill Daenerys, and that he tells her that he actually killed his two fellow commanders because they had philosophical agreements about Daenerys's beauty. And so pretty much he tells Daenerys that he will be loyal to her, and Daenerys says, well, I'll make you swear your loyalty, and he's fine with that. And so pretty much Daenerys has the second sons thanks to this guy. And he kind of mentions, like, one of the reasons why he, is helping Daenerys out is because he kind of thinks Daenerys is hot. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. So yeah, definitely. I imagine him and Jorah will probably be butting some heads because, like, obviously Jorah thinks Daenerys is hot, which is kind of one of the reasons why he helps Daenerys. So that'll be interesting to see. So it looks like Jorah's going to have a couple people that he's going to, be butting heads with. Yeah, so that's definitely interesting. And then right after that happens, we get a scene with Sam and Gilly and the baby. So they're kind of wandering around in the north. And I think we had, like, one scene earlier in the episode where they find this hut out in the woods somewhere, where they find one of those sacred trees with the red leaves and the faces on it. And so this crow sits down and it starts squawking at them, but at first they really don't think anything of it. But I'm pretty sure it's one of those three-eyed crows, because it was just like a creepy crow, like you knew it just like wasn't like normal, and like in that there was just something ominous about it. And then they had another crow come up. So at the end of the scene, we're with them in this area, and so Sam's trying to make a fire, but he sucks at it. And so Gilly tells them to come under the firs, and because they could be warm. And so Sam asks Gilly what she's gonna name the baby, and Gilly mentions that she doesn't really know a lot of names of guys, because obviously there's only ladies where she lives. And so Sam ends up suggesting a bunch of names, and so he explained things about family names, like because she starts mentioning Craster and I think Mormont. And so he explains that Mormont is a family name, and so he explains that stuff. And so right when that's happening, Gilly ends up helping make the fire, and so right when they're doing this, like, we hear all these crows squawking, and so Sam knows something's up, so he tells Gilly to stay in the hut. And so he goes out and he grabs a sword, and there's this whole big tree full of crows and shit. And then off in the distance, Gilly comes out with the baby. And then off in the distance, we see one of the White Walkers coming. And not one of like just the zombie ones, but like one of like the smart White Walkers who are in charge of everything. And so it's obviously that the White Walkers coming for the baby because they want Gilly's baby, and he keeps this. One of them keeps coming, and so Sam goes to defend Gilly and the baby from getting eaten by the White Walker, or having the White Walker do whatever it is that they do with the babies. And so he pulls out his sword, and like, and the White Walker just comes up and it grabs the fucking sword and it just smashes it. Like, it uses its ice power to freeze it and smash it. And then, so it just like, it hits Sam right out of the way. It's like just knocking him out of the way. And he's going up to Gilly and the baby, and like, and we think everything's done for it, but then Sam grabs the spear thing that he found at the Fist of the First Men, and he stabs the White Walker with it, and it kills the White Walker. So we find out what the spears were for, because like they just weren't like decorative hunting shit. Like they killed the White Walkers. So now we know that there's, I guess, 2 ways to kill the White Walkers. I guess I don't know if it depends on the type of White Walker, because I know with the zombies you have to burn them, and I guess with these smarter White Walkers, like, you have to stab them with the spear thing. So like, yeah, but that was really interesting and a really exciting moment. And I have to say, like, you know, I like the scene. I will admit it kind of started out being slow and it's just being weird, but I'm glad that this scene actually came to something, and especially because like for most of the season with Sam, like, it kind of just seems like either he's been being shit on most of the season, or he was just there doing random shit that really wasn't important. So like, you know, it was really nice to see Sam, you know, be in a scene and get to star in a scene where he gets to be heroic and important, in that it's not just him being there or being shit on for being, you know, the fat bookish guy. So yeah, that was definitely really cool. Yeah, so this was really an exciting episode. A lot of stuff happened. You know, Daenerys got a lot larger army. You know, Stannis cursed a couple people. Obviously, Tyrion and Sansa get married. And we learn something new about the White Walkers, which is really, really cool. So, but definitely looking forward a lot to next week's episode, because next week's episode is, you know, season 9 is usually always the climax of the seasons. Did I say season 9? Episode 9 is usually the climax for the seasons, and so I definitely know a lot of stuff is going to happen next episode, so definitely looking forward to that. I imagine we're gonna see a lot of stuff, cool stuff with Dany. I hope we see a lot of cool stuff with Jon and Mance Rayder and the Wildlings. Like, that'll be really cool. I imagine we'll get to see Rob's uncle marry one of the Frey girls, and I imagine we'll probably get to see Joffrey and Marjorie's wedding, because obviously that's going to be a big deal. So I imagine we'll probably see all of that stuff happening, and definitely looking forward to seeing how all that stuff plays out. So yeah, so definitely looking forward to next week's episode. This week's episode was awesome. So with that said, I'd love to hear your guys' thought on this week's episode. Let me know what you thought about everything. Let me know what you think's going to happen next week's episode. But don't give any spoilers, because I don't read the books, so no book spoilers. So make sure you have spoiler-free comments. So with that said, make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.